Hello, esports fans, and welcome to this exciting game of StarCraft that was found on reddit.com/r/castit. I am your host, Thaco, and today's game will be played out on Star Station between our two contestants, and spawning in the upper right-hand corner as our blue Terran, it is Revangale. And his opponent, spawning in the lower left-hand position as our red Zerg player, it is GGlord. Now this is going to be Star Station. This is a 4-spawn map, which means that you can spawn in any one of the 4 corners. So it's very important to find out where your opponent is, which is why we see these overlords getting out nice and early from GGlord. And we see that Revangale is going to just start off that wall off on his ramp that is so important when you're playing against a Zerg player. You really want to prevent those Zerglings from being able to run by and just devastate your army. And it looks like we will have GGlord going for that hatchery first. That is a very common opener against Terran. That is the hatchery before the spawning pool, because there is just usually not a whole lot the Terran player can do early in the game to punish you for playing with such an economically minded opening. Also, it's very important for the Zerg player to get those larvae out on the map nice and early, larvae being the basic building block of the Zerg army. And we do see that on his part, Revangale is going to grab his command center before his barracks, because he's going assuming that GGlord will grab that hatchery first, and counters that by building his command center first, and meeting GGlord in that very economic opening, wants to play in very similar style, and it's a place where he can. Pretty early gas guys are coming down here for Revangale. We will see what he decides to do with that after it's finished up, and after that barracks finishes, whether or not he will go for those Reapers, or whether or not he will go straight into the factory with that first 100 gas that he does get. The spawning pool is finishing up for GGlord. We should see him getting those queens out at both of his 2 bases. Queens being so important to the Zerg army, helps them spread creep. It is also their early anti-air unit, and it also has that wonderful inject larva ability that allows the hatchery to spawn additional larvae once the timer has been reached. And we see that Revangale is going to send his scout out across the map, going to check that cross spawns position first, and we'll get a pretty good read on where his opponent is. He may have seen the timing of when the overlords started to get around his base and assume that they had to come all the way across the map. But as he gets ready to move out and take that natural expansion, he does get his bunker down on the low ground. He wants to make sure that position is nice and protected. Going to queue up a couple supply depots across the front here and get that little wall off, which is such a nice feature. Instead of walling off at his ramp, he will wall off in his choke point. And we do see that Revangale is going to go for the factory. Also putting that reactor core on his barracks. He will switch that to the factory as soon as it is done, which will mean that he gets Hellions out onto the map nice and early. Hellions doing so well in the early game against the Zerg player. They just roast Zerglings alive. They also roast drones. GGlord not really getting a good full read on what Revangale is doing yet. He sees the expansion, he sees the bunker, but he does not know about this factory switch, although he can most likely assume it's coming because it is such a strong play against a Zerg player. And what has Revangale seen in GGlord's base? He's seen the expansion. He did not get his sight up into the main base. So neither player really knows what their opponent is doing, but GGlord can guess and is going to toss down that spine crawler. GGlord also getting really good creep spread started here. Should be 4 queens out onto the map, and Revangale has to expend a scan to find out what's going on in GGlord's main base. But he doesn't see a whole lot because there actually is at this point not a whole lot going on. GGlord really just getting that economy up and rolling. He is even moving out to take now his 3rd base up here. This is a little more of an unprotected position, because you can have units come in from this left-hand side, from this center position, or from the right-hand side. And the right-hand side is so wide open that it's hard to defend, and if you don't defend it properly, units will sweep down into your natural base and just kill you off. We see that the Hellion count from Revangale is starting to climb. He has 2 completed already. His next 2 are almost done. around 4 to 6 is the usual amount of Hellions to move out with as a Terran player. We'll have to see if he goes all the way up to 6 or if he switches up his tech. And he does switch up his tech as he tosses down a Widowmine and a Hellion. So he's going to go up to 5 Hellions with a Widowmine. Widowmine's doing an excellent job defending. Also, that might indicate that he is going to switch up into a bit more of a bio-mine tactic from here on in, as the Hellions do get down here towards the main base of GGlord. They go right over and scout that third base location, putting some damage onto that hatchery. And what is GGlord going to do about this? Is he going to bring any units to defend it, or is he just going to sack his third base? It looks like he might just be sacking his third base. He's not bringing over any units to defend this. This could be a huge pickup for Revangale if he is able to snipe off this hatchery. What is GGlord going to do about this? He's finally starting to pull his queens over. Hellions, not the greatest against queens. Hellions are good against light units. They're also not that great against buildings, as the queens are here now, and they are going to force the Hellions of Revangale back. They are joined by the 5th Hellion. And like I was saying, we are likely going to see that biomine transition because we also see Stimpack is almost complete. Adding on the starport now too, getting a couple extra. Oh, getting pinned back into that corner. That would have been an excellent spot to have some Zerglings in to just rush in and put on a lot of damage. The 2 queens are still chilling out by the third base. And we see that GGlord is starting to get a high quantity of roaches out onto the field, as well as the +1 Zerg melee attack and the +1 Zerg carapace, or armor if you will. Also morphing in that lair at his main base. This will allow him to tech up into those tier 2 units. One of the Hellions falls and they are pushed back, as behind this we see that Revangale is getting his upgrades rolling as well, starting off his +1 infantry weapon and +1 infantry armor for his marines, getting that mine count up and running, getting additional barracks on the field. His first starport is done. He can start getting those medevacs out there. Stimpack has completed, and he is now starting to get those combat shields, which add 10 life to your marines, making them a much more efficient unit, getting that mine coverage around his main base. And he's getting ready to take his third base once this bunker is complete. He has the command center here on the high ground. But we see that GGlord is starting to build up a very aggressive force here, getting that +2 Zerg melee attack start, as well as the +2 carapace, really starting to climb up nice and high in that roach count, adding on the Baneling nest and 2 more bases, although actually only 1 more expansion down here in this position, which the Widowmine has scouted, and a second macro hatchery in his main base, which will allow him to get additional larvae throughout the game. The third base for Revangale has been taken, but we see a huge swell of Zerglings coming in for GGlord. I think GGlord is going to try to push out here in a couple of minutes, bring those overseers over. He knows about the mines now. He has a couple overseers that will move out with his army and help keep his troops alive throughout this game. The Zerglings have finally spawned. He's not training any more units, but what does he have? He has 24 Zerglings, 17 roaches. He can make a push here and do a significant amount of damage, although there are 22 Marines, 3 Marauders, 4 Hellions, 2 Medevacs, and 6 Mines up there for Revangale. Revangale has an army that can defend this push should it come, as long as he gets it at the right angle and those Mines do their job and don't just kill him off. The armory just came down for Revangale. That might indicate to us that we are going to see Hellions or Hellbats come out here in a couple of minutes, as additional gas geysers are taken at the third base, and that third base is continuing to get nice and saturated. Centrifugal hooks is on the way for GGlord. He is going to make a nice aggressive swing here in a couple of minutes, but there is a drop moving across the bottom of the map for Revangale. He's going to hit that third base, but there are spore crawlers ready to defend it, as well as a spine crawler. This is not going to get a lot of damage done. Boosts right over that, past both of those. Finds the sweet spot here and is starting to kill off drones. Marines unfortunately run into that spine crawler, and the Zerglings run down here and start picking off all of the Marines. The Marines all fall, but the medevac stays alive. It also pulled back the forces of GGlord, and Revangale has vision on all of them. He knows how many troops are on the map right now for his opponents. He knows what is coming. He is going to have to get ready to defend against this very, very offensive swing should it ever actually come. And the troops for GGlord are finally starting to move out off of his creep. This is excellent creep spread, by the way, connecting all 4 of his bases and starting to push out very aggressively across the map. GGlord finding a couple spare troops from Revangale out across the map and picking off 2 Marauders, a Marine, and a couple of Widow Mines. Revangale is having now to pull back his entire army. He's going to have to defend here at his third base in this wide open expanse where the Zerglings can get a nice surround. He's going to have excellent Widow Mine placement. Huge number of Banelings being morphed in here for GGlord. Additional Zerglings being morphed in. And all of this is seen by Revangale. Revangale sending out some of his troops. This must be a misrally. He's going to lose a lot of his troops there. Oh no. And the Widow Mine is getting excellent connections before they are cleaned up. This is mainly Roaches and Banelings now at this point. Excellent kiting going on here from on Revangale's part. GGlord focusing down that bunker. Revangale is very low on the troop count. This is a lot of Roaches, but there are a huge number of Marauders in production, a high count of Medivacs. This should be kept alive here for Revangale, but it will take everything he has to hold this push. All of the SCVs at the third base were pulled off, and they were all killed off. This is not a good position to be in if your name is Revangale. Unfortunately for him, though, he is going to be able to hold this, and GGlord is being pushed back, but GGlord's Zerglings are starting to sweep in, and those Zerglings can get into combat with those Marauders and deal significant amounts of damage with their +2 upgrades complete. But no, GGlord's going to pull back. Revangale held that beautifully, lost a lot of workers and mining time here at his third base, but it was worth it for the hold. How many workers did he wind up losing there? GGlord killed off 20 workers so far this game. That was a big loss. But looks like Revangale will hold his position for now. Oh, he catches this army right before those Banelings spawn, but the Banelings have spawned. GGlord is not sending them into combat yet, though, and it looks like he is starting to pull back his troops. I think he is scared of Widow Mine placement and the potential for that Widow Mine placement through this army, even though there is none. Oh, and GGlord sees those drops moving out. Revangale loads them up right in view of GGlord's forces. But GGlord is going to push in now. Huge number of Banelings connecting. Cutting them back a little bit. Those Widow Mines are up there under those, but they do not get any of the spawns. Lots of Roaches are left here now, but we saw Revangale already held a push like this once. Can he do it twice? A lot of his forces are in the bottom right-hand position of the map, though, getting ready to run in and try to kill off this fourth base, but they might not be able to do it. Okay, they are going to be able to force back the mining time. They kill off the Spine Crawler. The forces here are rebuffed. GGlord's pulling back everything he has to defend. Okay, he realizes how few troops there are up here in the upper right-hand position for Revangale. Is going to push into that third base and try to kill it off while he can. Even trying to snipe off this fourth base from building. But a lot of Zerglings and Roaches have pushed back this drop for Revangale. GGlord is holding his base excellently. But there we go. Now finally the troops are starting to swell in for Revangale, and it looks like he will once again be able to hold and push back. Oh, but GGlord is once again amassing all of his troops here in the middle of the map, all within sight of those Widow Mines. Those Widow Mines not in an excellent spot to do any damage, but they did see everything coming. Widow Mines burrowing again up here at the right outside the natural base. Oh, they should get excellent connections here as all the Roaches do clump up on them, but Roaches do not take a lot of damage from those Widow Mines. They are not the most effective counter to Roaches. Siege tanks are much better against the Roach. The Roaches are going to come in and once again try to deny this third base as GGlord actually establishes his fifth base in this game. The fourth base is once again under attack, though. The third base has been forced to lift for Revangale. GGlord is pushing back up into this natural. Revangale is getting very choked off here at this point. He does not have a lot of mining time, but he has a lot of banked minerals. That is actually very crucial for him at this point, as it does allow him to continue to produce in this tough economic time for him. He was able to snipe off the fourth base. Again, though, that puts GGlord only on 4 bases still. It did not really cripple him as much as it could have at this point. But he's going to load up this drop and try to move it out again and grab positioning and try to snipe off another base. It did pull GGlord back for a moment, but GGlord is once again on the offensive, getting ready to sweep up into the third base, which has not even been set down again yet. He does not try to take that. His 3-3 upgrades, though, are almost complete. That is 3 infantry weapons and 3 infantry armor. Also getting those concussive shells, which are the AoE slow off the Marauder's shot. He's got to burrow those Widow Mines in the perfect position if he's going to hold this push. And that actually might be the perfect position, but there is now an Overseer with the army, and the Overseer is going to help kill those off. Not before they get some halfway decent detonations, though. But now there's a high count of Banelings in this army, and all of Revangale's troops are very clumped up. They were triggered on that first Widow Mine, but the next round of Banelings do huge amounts of damage to the army of Revangale. Revangale is vastly outsupplied by the troops of GGlord, but these bunkers are going to be the crucial element to this hold as he gets the SCVs down there for the repair. He's not getting the one on the right-hand side repair, though, and it eventually does fall. The Marauders come out of it, and they are able to push back those Roaches. Oh, and there was an excellent drop down here from Revangale that did kill off this 4th base of GGlord's as he was pushing up into the natural expansion of Revangale. Revangale is able to just spread thin this army of GGlord and hold every single one of GGlord's pushes with the minimal number of troops that he can, as he's now going to try to drop this 3rd base, but that is right where the army is. He's also within the range of the Spore Crawlers and the Queens. This is not going to go well for him. He's going to lose that full medevac. The second one does escape, but it is full of 4 Marines. It cannot get much more damage done. GGlord is starting to reestablish his 4th base position in the bottom center, as well as trying to grab an expansion in the upper left-hand side of the map. And he is going to deny this 3rd base, 4th base now from Revangale, who cannot land on the creep. GGlord is once again starting to amass all of his troops in the middle of the map. He's going to push up again in a moment. Revangale has once again landed his 3rd base and is mining from that again. He's getting his bank up very high. Both players are just in a phase of building up their economies, but it looks like GGlord's going to move out here in a second. Getting those overseers up into position so they can snipe off the Widow Mines as early as possible. Sending up 1 or 2 Zerglings to try to bait out the Widow Mine shots. The second Widow Mine gets a couple more detonations though. Very bunched up here. He's got to be very careful to focus fire down all of the Banelings. And the Banelings are rolling in. They push Revangale back up into his natural. The first bunker, the only bunker falls. The SCVs are pulled off the line to try to start taking some of this damage from the Roaches. The Roaches are focusing down the SCVs, and the Marauders sweep in, and they kill off a large number of Roaches. This supply looks very, very different for these two players, but I fear that might just be because GGlord has a high quantity of workers out on the map still, as once again, this 4th base does fall, but the 4th has been reestablished here in the upper left-hand side, and a 5th is being established above that. What is the army supply between these two armies? Revangale actually holds the army supply lead because GGlord has a giant quantity of drones still out on the map at 69. He's getting that economy going strong, but it unfortunately means that his opponent can always have the larger army, although we have not seen very large supply counts out from either of these players yet, as it looks like GGlord is going to try to sweep into this right-hand position, or the center base, before the planetary can finish, and will kill off all of the mules there, and actually just delay mining time. He has no anti-air, so he cannot shoot down that command center, but will split perfectly, which will prevent Revangale from pushing down into that base and attempting to take his expansion. He's going to start running his troops up. There's a lot of Banelings in this army and not a lot of Widow Mines to counteract any of this. Revangale doing an excellent job cutting back off those Banelings, focus firing them down, splitting pretty well. Not a lot of Baneling detonations have come in, but it looks like this might be game over for those with those Baneling splits down here at the 3rd base. Oh, the Banelings actually detonate on not a lot of units. Oh, but there's so many SCVs that could have detonated on there, but they were not manually detonated, which would have been beautiful. Detonating on the Marauders, not really getting a lot of damage done. Revangale has once again held that push from GGlord with minimal losses. 50 workers have been killed off, but there are still so many workers here at this 3rd base. And this base has been denied at the middle side. In the middle, the bottom base is being denied. Revangale has to find out about this new 4th and 5th base, though, if he wants to stay in this game. He has to stay even on those worker counts. And finally, we do see GGlord has pulled off the army supply lead as well as the worker supply lead. This game is starting to swing in favor of GGlord, but Revangale is not out of it yet. He can still hold with some perfect engagements. Getting those Widow Mines in position. Oh, they don't think they're going to burrow before they're sniped off. They barely get burrowed in time. And GGlord is being pushed back into his 4th base. Revangale now knows about that 100% and is going to try to push up into this and deny it. Revangale going into the aggressive phase of this game, but none of his medevacs have energy. He cannot heal any of his units. As he kites, oh, he's cutting back into the Widow Mines. Alright, he snipes off a couple of Zerglings there. Oh, full energy medevac comes in and starts healing up all of these units. As GGlord pushes in and gets giant Baneling detonations there on that bottom side of the army. Oh, that one did not do too much. I believe a Widow Mine may have actually detonated on that. One of the Widow Mines with 15 kills now. These Marauders trying to kite the Roaches back, trying to get to full health. Oh, and getting them in range of the Planetary Fortress, which will just absolutely destroy all of the Roaches. Morphing in additional Banelings, really just sticking to his guns, sticking to this Roach Baneling Zergling tactic. Neither player transitioning out of their tech. Widowmine getting like a Zergling kill. But we just saw a whole lot of Banelings get morphed in. 8 Banelings are now thundering down into this base. If they can get into range of that planetary fortress, so they're going to have a hard time, especially if the SCVs are pulled to repair. But the Zerglings getting an actual better surround on the planetary. Not enough SCVs can get into range to repair. It is barely holding on, and the SCVs have just kept that planetary fortress up while the Marauders are able to push back the Roaches. There's a drop in the upper left-hand side, which will kill off the 5th base for GGlord. Revangale taking this into a very aggressive stage of the game. Has just been able to drop at just the exact perfect moment all game. Oh, and unfortunately that one poor Marauder gets surrounded by the Broodlings and gets killed off as these Marauders now drop into the 4th base as the army pushes up from the backside. They are being very aggressive. They want to kill off this base, but there's a huge quantity of Roaches and Zerglings at this position. I don't think they can pull it off. This Widowmine might get an excellent connection, especially if it hits the workers, hits the Roaches. Roaches don't take the worst amount of damage, but I believe most of the workers were killed off there. GGlord may have just sacked them though so he can get more army supply. But no, he actually is mined out in most of his bases, does not have a very large mineral income. But that also means that Revangale is mined out across most of the map, neither player having the banks that they had in the mid game. Both players starting to play a much lower economy game, trying to be much more conservative with their units. They cannot throw them away at the rate they were earlier. GGlord claiming that Terran is just too good, and then GG's out of the game because he has been defeated. He was picked apart at the corners. He just could not deal with those drops in that game. Revangale, just with the excellent drop timings, was able to starve out his opponent and eventually take the game. Well, thank you for watching with me today, and I will hope you will join me for additional games in the future. Thank you all for watching. Enjoy your day.